Welcome to the Rex Andrews Show. If you're a first-time listener, welcome to the program. Glad to have you. We're glad you found us. Don't forget to subscribe, and also don't forget to comment. We love the interactions. For those of you who are returning listeners, I have one thing to say to you today. Thank you very much. It was within the last week that we learned that we're actually in the top 10 fastest growing podcasts around. And that's all because of you. Well, and also the amazing guests that we have. So thank you for tuning in and listening in. We expect things to continue to grow like this because each week we get more and more exciting guests with really interesting stories. You know, I'm one of those kind of guys who is too many interests for just one lifetime. So there's always another story right around the corner. All right, before we get started with our guest today, quick house cleaning, just like always. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're on one podcast platform and thinking of another, that's easy because we're on just about every one we know of that's in existence. So 23 different podcast distribution points. You can find us on the major social media platforms, including this video today on YouTube. And then, of course, always the best place to get information, what's going on with the show. You can listen to the podcast episodes is on the rexandrewsshow.com. So don't forget to dial in, subscribe, comment, have fun, make suggestions on who we should talk to. Okay, today I've got a great guest that's coming in. I'm not even going to be able to explain exactly what she's done here because there's some mad scientist stuff going on here. But I always try to bring you interesting stories, and today's another one. I have Lindsey McCoy with us this morning. Welcome, Lindsey.
Well, thanks. Thanks so much for having me, Rex. I'm excited. I love Colorado.
Oh, it's beautiful here today. Let's see, we're recording this on the 5th of March, and it's going to be about 65 degrees here today. So not a bad.
I was just looking in my background. You can see, I don't know if you see the picture of the flat irons.
Yes, I can. That's not very far from me. Not very far at all. If I had a really big arm, I could probably hit that from here. It's just 2 exits away. So that's great. Fantastic. All right. So Lindsey, you're doing some interesting things on the packaging front and other things, but I want to talk about that. But first, you know, life, we are all a accumulation of the stops and the influences and who we are and that get us to these places. Sometimes there's a little bit of serendipitous luck, but I don't believe in luck. I think luck is the intersection that sounds like effort and perspiration. So let's get the Lindsey story. So let's dial back. I'd like to know where you were born, what were your family like, what were your parents doing? Oh yeah, we get it all. I mean, you don't have to kill us with extreme detail. But yes, we want to know because, you know, as a consumer of biographies, which has been a hobby of mine my whole life, people think that there's all these overnight successes. Well, there's no such thing as an overnight success. Overnight successes take a decade or more often. And so you're on a journey right now. And so we'd like to understand how you got there. So dial back. Where'd you grow up? What was your family like?
Yeah. Okay. I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay.
But all of my family is actually from Cincinnati, Ohio. Parents, grandparents, all of it. We moved around a ton as a kid. I had a father who was a serial entrepreneur and salesman. And so, you know, it was always, what's the next business? That was the conversation growing up with him and my grandparents and my aunts and my uncles. I decided at the time that I was never going to go into business. I was going to rebel, take a different path, and I ended up in the nonprofit world, actually.
Okay.
I ended up in Boulder, Colorado after college, working for a community foundation there, and learned a ton from Josie Heath, who is a Colorado name that a lot of people out there would recognize.
Yes.
About, you know, telling stories and starting small and growing things and not being afraid to own that you are small and that you get bigger from hard work and bringing people in, and the importance of partnerships and collaboration and listening to everybody at the table. And it was a really incredible experience that took me forward. And I think, you know, working in the nonprofit actually has informed a lot of the business that we started. And I think it's been a real asset to everything that we're doing, getting that basis.
Okay. So let's backtrack a little bit
Yeah.
there, because you fast forwarded a few things. Because
I did. Sorry, I
it's
jumped
okay.
ahead.
No. So, do you have siblings?
I do. I have a younger sister who was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, and she actually is the co-founder of the business with me. So we run it.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's our maiden name is Delaplane. So that's partially where the plane, the E in the plane products comes from.
Okay.
The company
Fantastic. Now, you said you guys moved around a little bit because your dad was a serial entrepreneur. Well, I completely understand that. And those who know me on a personal level will chuckle. So, and then how about your mom? Did she work? Was she a homemaker? What was the rest of your family look
Yeah.
like?
She was a homemaker when we were little. She ended up becoming a teacher's aide.
Okay.
So it was a great schedule again, for a mom off when we were off. My mom, whereas my dad was serial entrepreneur like you, a lot of energy, always going in a lot of different directions. She was just, and continues to be, a wonderful source of just unquestioning support.
Fantastic.
I credit her with we always knew that we were well loved, regardless. Even if she was confused by whatever I was up to and I had to explain it to her 5 times, she was supportive and on board regardless.
Okay. So then where did you end up graduating from high school? And then tell us a little bit about your education.
We ended up in Fort Myers, Florida, actually, on the West Coast.
Okay.
And did middle school and high school there. We finally convinced our dad that we needed to settle in for a little while. I moved 9 times by the time we ended up in Florida in 4th grade.
Wow.
So he committed to staying and did middle school and high school there. And then I actually went to Swanee. It's a little liberal arts college in Tennessee.
Okay.
And that was, I think, part of what attracted me to it. It has a long tradition. People still wear gowns, academic gowns. Teachers dress in academic gowns to teach. There's
Wow.
an honor code that you sign when you go in that says, I will not lie, cheat, or steal. So all the doors are open all the time. There's no teacher there when you take tests. They just expect that you're just going to do it and close your book when you're done and walk away. It was steeped in, tradition and history, which is something I think I didn't get growing up. So it was super fun for me to have that experience.
Okay. So did you get your degree in a particular discipline then?
Political science.
Political science.
And I thought at the time, I already knew, as I said, I wasn't going to do business. I thought I was going to go into government, and I went to Indiana University's School of Public and Environmental Affairs.
Okay.
And ended up doing an internship, realized that I did not want to go into government, that I did not have the patience. The one bill I worked on ended up getting shelved for a silly reason. And I was like, this is not what I want to do. I want to do stuff. So I switched over to a nonprofit management concentration. And ironically, for the business that I'm doing right now, I did not take a single environmental class while I was at the School of Public and Environmental Affairs. I was completely focused on, working with people and women's issues and children and education and all of those things. That's where my heart was at the time.
Okay. So you went into nonprofits in Boulder. How long did you stay up in Boulder?
I was in Boulder, let's see, this is going to date me, 98 to 2003.
Okay.
So about 5 years.
About 5 years. Now, was there an itch that moved you out of Boulder to something else?
Yes.
I'm beginning to wonder if there's a little bit of your father in your hair.
For sure. I actually met a boy who had gone to Swanee as well, although we didn't know each other at the time. And we decided to chuck everything and buy an old sailboat and go sailing for a year.
Oh, nice.
So he was a sailor. I had spent time on the water. We were both just kind of at a place in our lives where we were trying to decide what we wanted to do next. And that's what it was. So that is what we did. We sailed around the Caribbean for a year before we ran out of money and had to go back to work.
I bet you have some stories with that. And I wouldn't be surprised there might have been some Jimmy Buffett music being hummed in the background.
Oh, not if he has anything to say about it. Growing up in the Bahamas, he is anti-Buffett. My dad, ironically, loved Jimmy Buffett.
Really?
We would drive from Florida back to North Carolina and Ohio with 2 Jimmy Buffett tapes the entire time in the car. So I know every Buffett song by heart. It's persona non grata with my now husband.
Well, the funny part was when I was growing up, I relate to that is from high school all the way through college and young adulthood, Red Rocks being the great amphitheater, we would every year make the trek to Jimmy Buffett. And every year you had no idea how you got back home. That was just crazy. It was sure. So I'm amazed. I bet you have some amazing stories from your 1-year odyssey around the Caribbean.
It was a ton of fun, and it was good for me in so many ways. I'm a bit of a productivity junkie, and sailboats are not a fast way to get anywhere.
No.
So when we sailed from one portion of Florida to another, that would take about an hour in a car, and it took a complete day. I was like, okay, take off the watch, put down the checklist. It was a life-changing experience in a lot of ways, but it certainly helped a very impatient person get a new perspective.
So did you have enough tools packed? That's the next question, being someone who's been around boats.
Never. You never have the right tool. You always need something else. Sledgehammers came in very handy. A lot of WD-40, a lot of rope, a lot of duct tape.
Yep.
It was steady and constant ingenuity. And, luckily, and the reason my husband will always say, that's why we're on a sailboat. If all else fails, you sail where you need to go. If the engine won't start, you got a backup plan. So. Well,
but the only problem with that is that sails still need things, right?
I mean, like wind, yes.
Wind and well, then you've got cables and ropes and tie downs, and it's not just like you throw a sail out in the wind and you're just gone. No, there's mechanics to that.
That's a little bit easier to fake than getting an engine started.
True.
So.
Well, fantastic. So was there a spot in the Caribbean that you fell in love with the most, or was there a spot that you liked?
Yeah, well, my husband is from the Bahamas, so predisposed to there, but we went over to the Central America side, and I mean, it's all beautiful. Yucatan was beautiful. There's a crazy river in Guatemala that's right on the Caribbean Sea. You can sail up this Rio Dulce, and it's like jungle. I mean, it's one of the most amazing things I've ever done, just because it's so different to be in a jungle on a sailboat in a river. So it was just amazing. We got to go out to the Bay Islands in Honduras, and that was as far as we went before It was kind of time to turn around and sail back home.
So it wasn't just finances. Did you get to a point where you were kind of tired of the sailing gag?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I wasn't raised Catholic, but you'd never know it, because I do have a constant guilty conscience that I'm not doing something. So I think it was, for me, okay, let's dig back in and find something to do. But it was an incredible year, and I'm so grateful for it.
So looking back, would you do it again?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Then we got married and had kids, and all the reasons that you can't do it for a long time.
Sure.
So our son's about to go into high school, so it'll look probably a little bit different now that we're 20, 30 years older, but certainly would love to do something like that again at some point.
Well, there's plenty of adventures still to go. So you mentioned you have kids. Tell us a little bit about that makeup. You don't have to get into the specifics of ages or names, but what do you have? We
have one who feels like 3. He is, I think, what they call now a spirited child, has a lot of energy. So I just thought I'd have more, but we ended up post sailboat going back to the Bahamas, where my husband is from, and living there on a very small island. So not the infrastructure here in the States, the childcare and on all sorts of options. So it was great. I was with him when he was tiny,
nice.
Which I maybe wouldn't have been in another situation, but I was, and it was, a great, so much fun, so hardest thing I've ever done. But, he and I are incredibly close. He's 13 now and still tight. And I think because of all those years we spent together, and wouldn't have traded it for anything. I'm glad that's how it turned out.
So after you were done playing Pirates of the Caribbean and floating around, what was the next stop on your journey?
So we ended up back in the Bahamas. It was going to be temporary, and then I ended up finding actually a job at the time working for an environmental nonprofit that needed some help. They just gotten a grant from the Nature Conservancy, and they were trying to figure out how to set themselves up as a real organization, not just volunteer run. And I had some experience, although at the time, my only environmental experience was living in Boulder, Colorado, and knowing what the term zero waste was, and understanding recycling just from osmosis in Boulder.
Sure.
So I ended up taking that job, and we ended up staying for 11 years.
Fantastic. So now, does that get us to the point where you stumbled into or started your current business and what you're doing?
So yeah, I mean, so what the interesting thing is, I mentioned the lack of infrastructure there. I ended up doing a lot of, beach cleanups and other work. And because they don't have the same, garbage collection management system, you see a lot of the plastic and the waste there in a way that you don't in the States. The
Right.
fact that you use plastic and then it's around forever is a visual sense in the islands. You start seeing the plastic on the water, on the beaches, on the road, and you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
it's everywhere, and it's not going away. It's just breaking down. And so I started doing the things. I saw your reusable cup, carrying a reusable water bottle and a reusable shopping bag. And one place I couldn't find a solution was all of those little plastic bottles in the shower. So I'm thinking about that. And at the same time, we decide it's time to move back to the States. I was getting a little restless, as you mentioned, a little bit of my dad and me. Our son was getting older. We were on a really tiny island. He wanted to play sports and do things you can't do when there's only 50 kids on the whole island.
True.
So we decided to move back, and I thought, I'm ready to take a break from the nonprofit world. I don't want to write another grant proposal. I don't want to run another fundraising event. I want to do something different. I found this what to me was a gap in the market. Having grown up around small businesses, it didn't seem crazy to think about starting a business to meet that need. And so I called my sister, and she has a background in design, is a bit of a product hound, loves to shop, all things that are not me. And I said, I'm thinking about doing this. You want to do it with me? I think I could use your help. And she said yes. And neither one of us had any idea what that actually meant, but we committed to doing that in May 2015. I moved back to the States in July. And in February 2017, we opened the website doors of Plain Products.
Okay, so real quick, just so people are listening along can get that. Can you share your website? And if it's anything peculiar, please spell it.
Yeah. So it is Plain with an E, PLAINE, products.com.
Okay.
And do you want me to go ahead and
get
absolutely. Deal, or you want to ask me some
No,
questions?
we want to hear the 30-second elevator pitch here for a minute and understand, and then they're going to have lots of questions.
Okay, great. So we do personal care products in refillable aluminum bottles. So our mission is to eliminate single-use plastic from the bathroom. So you hop on our website, you order shampoo, conditioner, body wash, facial wash, lotion, beauty oil, any of our products. It comes to you in an aluminum bottle. I have one right here for those of you on YouTube.
Nice.
It comes with a pump. Put the pump on, use the product, and then when you're running low, you order a refill bottle. And the refill shows up. You just switch the pump over, and then along with that refill bottle comes a return label. Put the empty bottle in the box, stick the return label on, and send it back to us for free. And we wash, refill, and reuse the bottles.
Wow, that's great. So those also recyclable then too?
They are recyclable. Our goal is to reuse them 3 to 5 times if possible. But then, the great thing about aluminum is that it's infinitely recyclable. So this is something that I learned. When you recycle things, you melt them back down.
Right.
Recycle aluminum, you melt down, make another bottle, easy. Plastic, you melt down, it actually changes the chemical compound, and you can only do that once or twice before it becomes unusable.
Right.
So plastic, while it is great to recycle it and reuse it, it's still unfortunately going to end up in a landfill at some point.
At some point, yeah.
At some point. Or the, worst case, the ocean littering somewhere, but it's going to end up being trash. Whereas, other materials, metals, glass, paper to some extent, you can just keep reusing them. So much better for, again, what we very specifically called single use. I recognize that plastic is an incredible material. And for cars and medical equipment and things that have a very long life and need to, be resilient, I think plastic makes a ton of sense.
Sure.
But for something that I'm going to use once and then throw away to sit in a landfill for hundreds of years, that's off-gassing, carbon, that's helping create climate change, doesn't make a ton of sense.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. See, I bet most people didn't know that plastic only has maybe a 2 times, to be fair, 2 times reuse before the chemistry of the material no longer is usable.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's not something that the plastic industry talks a lot about for obvious reasons. I think it's interesting. Plastic is, for the most part, a byproduct of the oil refining process. So they make, gasoline and other things, and then they've got this leftover stuff, and they figured out, oh, we can use it to make plastic. So it's super cheap. They're happy to make any money off of it because they're going to have it regardless. So, they're thrilled. They're thrilled to have a market for it. And as unfortunate lockdowns have happened and the price of gas has dropped, they've actually been pushing plastic as a way to stay relevant and continue to make money. So, they're very interested in promoting the narrative of how important it is that we can just use something once and throw it away. I mean, disposability is the most important thing, right?
Sure.
So I think we've all kind of been convinced that in the last 40 years. And, it's really interesting to think about, like, well, people did survive without plastic before. And maybe, your kids, my kids, our grandkids are going to be the ones that are going to be dealing with these full landfills and with the results of climate change. So while it's cheap right now, there are costs of a lot of this disposability down the line.
Yeah, I grew up in Golden, Colorado, which is the home of Coors Brewery, and Coors was always known as an innovator, and they were the first. They were the first in the world to put beer in aluminum cans.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, they were the very first. Coors was, I don't think they are anymore now that they've been bought and merged a couple times, but they were integrated where they owned every step of their process. So they would own some of the places where the hops were grown, the grains were grown, and then sub out the others. They had their own construction company, so they built their own factories and things. They had their own glass company to make bottles, and then they started making cans. They made aluminum cans, and so they were one of the first. And I can remember Bill Coors. I used to be his paper boy as a kid. I can remember listening to a talk. I don't even remember where exactly it was. It was at some scouting event or something that he was talking about the innovation of using aluminum, just because of the same thing that you're talking about here, that aluminum can be reused almost infinitely. And so, people kind of chuckle that, a lot of the airplanes that have been made out of beer cans. Well, that's true, because you can recycle aluminum that way. So Coors was the innovator to get aluminum packaging. And, I don't know how many times over the years that when I was still drinking beer, that I probably recycled a lot of those cans back at my house several times over.
Good job.
Yeah. So interesting. Well, did it take a lot of research to decide on using aluminum, or how did you come to that decision?
Man, I mean, I think I mentioned that we came up with the idea of May in 2015 and then didn't launch till early 2017. All of that time then was spent learning, asking questions, doing research, calling people, realizing that we asked them the wrong questions, calling them back, asking them different questions, trying things out. And we originally were going to do stainless steel.
Okay.
And then it turns out that not all stainless steel is stainless.
Yep.
And we got some prototypes and they rusted. And we were like, no, this is not gonna work, not gonna fly. Nobody wants rusty bottles in their shower, no matter how cute they are or how good they are for the environment. So that was a dark day in our company's infancy, but we pivoted and looked at aluminum bottles, which are lighter, which is great for shipping, and cheaper. And they have worked out worked out great. I mean, we had to redesign the packaging to protect them a little bit more, so we didn't get those dents along the way, but we've been incredibly happy with them.
Now, on your website, are there studies or research or information that people can find out kind of the comparisons of using aluminum over other materials as containers?
Oh, that's an interesting question. There is definitely, we put out a sustainability report each year that sort of talks about, what we do and why we do it and how it matters.
Hmm.
Um, but probably not as clear cut as that. So that's an interesting idea of putting them side by side. We definitely talk about aluminum versus plastic and what you and I were talking about, the recyclability of it and the life cycle of it. And then there are some studies, I don't know if we have them, that I've read about, again, trying to get to that at least 3 times reusing something so
Hmm.
that it makes sense. All of the energy spent to create it kind of is defrayed over those and makes it even better than some other options. But yeah, it's definitely out there. And if people want to see it, I'm also always happy to share it, always happy to talk about it.
Okay, that's cool. So the other thing I think that not everybody gets, because there's a lot of, I don't know if you want to call it misinformation. I hate that term. Um, there's just a lot of information that can be argued in different directions. But
Hmm.
from time to time, based on the amount of availability of product, recycling plastics becomes, sometimes they're just throwing it away anyway, even though you've got the recycling truck running through your neighborhood, because there's such a glut of it on the marketplace and it not hasn't been used. And so I know I've seen different, I would say, short documentaries talking about,
Hmm.
people are recycling, but guess what? It's still ending up in landfills because there's just a glut of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that comes back to what I was saying. Plastic is incredibly cheap because
Yep.
it's there anyway. And so if you're going to invest the time and money to recycle it, but you can't sell it for what it costs you to recycle it,
Hmm.
it's not worth it.
Yeah.
So we were, until about 2 years ago, sending most of our plastics to China, and
Okay.
they were doing the recycling
Yep.
because everything was booming so much there. They wanted all the raw materials they could get. That stopped in 2000. They stopped taking it.
Yep.
And that's really when the backlog in the US of plastics really started. Was, there just isn't much of a market here because we produce so much oil, because there's so much excess virgin plastic material.
Yeah.
There just really isn't a market for recycled plastic.
Yeah, that's interesting because there's all these people get really, really militant about their recycling. But if you start to do some research, different places in the country, it's different, but there is a massive glut of it right now. And
There is, and that's why I certainly don't want to say it's not a bad thing to recycle, but recycling is not going to solve this particular issue,
right,
unfortunately.
right. Well, and two, there's not the motivation. Gosh, how do I politically correctly say this? There are a lot of people that you see in major metropolitan areas that are recycling metals. So picking up all kinds of metals and those types of stuff. I don't want to classify them as a type of person or whatever, but there are people who do that. When we were kids, my dad was a highway patrolman here in Colorado, and to help clean up, and then we'd make a little extra spending cash, we would go pick up cans along the road and we would clean up the highways and stuff. And it was aluminum cans. And gosh, trash cans and trash cans and trash cans of the silly things, and you'd end up getting, I don't know, like $3 or $4. To me, it didn't seem like we were making all that much of spending cash, but it was a good thing that he liked to do. But there is the thing that's available for the aluminum containers is the fact that there are people who would pick them up, and if they were tossed along the beach, there probably might be someone who would pick that up and cash it in, right?
Yeah, again, because aluminum is so reusable, there's definitely a market for that in a way that there's not for plastic. I mean, a part of the reason, we went with aluminum is if somebody does have a bottle and either can't send it back or for whatever, it gets dented up, it's going to be recycled.
Yeah.
They can put it in there. Chances are much higher of that being recycled than almost any other material.
Right. Right. Because I know this, I've talked with, and serendipitously about 9 months ago, I talked to one of the managers, a friend of the family's friend who runs one of the largest trash companies with letters of W and M, won't list their full name. But when they are in a pickle on what they are keeping and selling and not, it's the cans, the steel cans and cans. It's not the plastics. In fact,
Yeah.
they've gotten away completely from glass. They don't even want to touch glass anymore. So yeah, so it does have a resiliency for value that obviously plastics don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, I think we're still really learning about plastics. There have been a lot of studies that have come out that have maybe said, because it is kind of a toxic chemical, that maybe we don't want to be using it constantly on things that we put on our bodies and eat out of. I mean, more and more, they're certainly saying, like with leftovers, don't heat it up in the plastic container, don't freeze it in the plastic container, transfer to glass, transfer to metal. So I think we're still really understanding, the science experiment that we're currently conducting on ourselves
Right.
with a lot of the plastic that we're using. So
that's great. So a question came to my mind with your containers. I don't know if it's just a science experience in my mind. Do you serialize your numbers? Identify your containers so when they come back you can say, oh, this one's been reused 4 times, 2 times?
That's interesting. So we do, as a personal care product, we have to stamp, when they're made, they put a stamp on the bottom that says the date and when it's done. Thus far it's been pretty easy because we keep changing the bottles, so we're like, oh, I know that one's been around, I know this one's been around. But we do wipe that mark off when we send it back to be refilled, just so we can keep track of how old the product is in it.
Right.
And hopefully we're not going to be changing the print. So we are going to have to figure out a way to track that a little bit better. I mean, we know how often we send bottles back. So that's a good point for us, an internal process to make sure that we're writing that down somewhere so we can keep track of it.
Well, my crazy brain went to the fact that, back in the military days when the pilots had their planes, they all named their planes. And then they kept how many battles or, other planes they shot down. Yeah, Enola Gay or, whatever it was, right? So I was just thinking, do these containers have names? Do they have a serial number on them?
That is interesting. And we have had somebody ask us about like carving stuff into them or,
Yeah.
So the interesting piece is that you don't get your same bottle, somebody else will get your bottle. But we've played around with different ideas, and it is interesting within our own market. There are people who buy from us who are excited to get a little bottle with a dent. They're like, oh, look, it's been used before. Like, I'm getting your used bottle. How cool is that? And then there are people who are like, I would like the pristine one, please. The bottles in my bathroom. So we're, trying to walk that balance as well of meeting the needs of all of our the range of consumers that buy from us. It's a pretty, I didn't talk about it, but it's a great product. It's actually aloe based instead of water. So it's super dense, no chemicals. It's, all phthalate, sulfate, paraben, all the things that you don't want it's not in it. It seemed like a weird idea to me to create this environmental package and then stick a bunch of chemicals in it. So it is a pretty high premium product. So there are some people that are like, I want it in a pretty bottle that I can,
right.
be proud of.
So when you get the containers back, are you actually stripping off the ink or paint that's on them so that way or are you just putting them right back in the same bottle and send them?
So we do a hot press print. So it's actually kind of, it's on the bottle. It's not separate from the bottle. It's printed right on the bottle. So when we get them back, we drain them, we pre-wash them inside and outside. Thank you to the beer industry for developing some good techniques for getting hot water up in there.
Yep.
We run them through an industrial bottle washer.
Okay.
But looks like a dishwasher that you'd see in a restaurant.
Yeah.
We have a rack that holds the bottles up. Run it through there on a sanitized cycle, and then store them and get them refilled. So, it's actually not rocket science. It's not that complicated. It's just a little bit more work.
A little more work.
And a little more cost to bring them back. I mean, the same thing with, we don't send out a pump each time because, if you send another pump, that first pump's just going to get thrown out. So not rocket science. Is it a little bit more work for us that not every box is the same and you just, do the same thing again and again. You have to look and see, have they ordered before? What do I need to send them? Is it a pump? Is it a return label? But that's what's important to us. So
Okay.
that's what we prioritize as a business is it. I actually look at it as almost a service.
Uh-huh.
We're selling products, but we're also selling the service of, we're not going to send you an extra pump. We are going to take the bottle back from you. You know, we're going to make sure it gets reused, or if it can't be reused, that it is going to get recycled. So it's kind of that larger picture.
Well, where my mind went as a scientist, a data scientist. I'm not a scientist like that kind of scientist, but I my entire career has been in computers and data, and workflows and processes. That's why it made me come down to think, well, wonder if they've serialized these, so that way then they could start to prove out the infinite number of recycles, because we've got bottle 111 has been recycled 6 times, and then you can make a case study and put that on your website and market it to people.
We're honestly just now getting there.
Okay.
So the first run or two of bottles, because we were a small company, we had to buy them from China. When I called U.S. manufacturers, they were like, "How many truckloads would you like?" And I was like, "No truckloads. I just need a few cases."
Yeah.
So I think last year, COVID made everything weird. I can't remember if it was 2020 or 2019. We were able to switch over to a U.S. manufacturer, and the quality of the bottles and the liners that we got went up, exponentially.
Sure.
So we sort of made the decision to just switch over to that. So we reset our account at that point.
Okay.
So all of those bottles are, and we have a long lead time. Our stuff lasts a long time. So it's 6 months often before we get a bottle back, sometimes even longer.
Even longer.
So we're just sending back that first round of those bottles right around now to get refilled.
Okay.
So I appreciate your data questions, and we're going to have to start doing some internal hash marks. But I would love to be able to talk to you a year or two from now and tell you about the amazing data system that we have for tracking the bottle.
I'm going to guess that it's going to surprise you how quick those will come back, because if people are wanting to support what you do, and it's like a lot of things in life, once you look at the data and the facts, well, then you have a different opinion on things. If the average person doesn't understand that, plastics can really only be recycled twice, or one time and then it's done, well, then that's not a very good, container, right? From a recyclability perspective.
Well, yeah. I mean, from just a long-term planet effect.
Right.
So I do think that, it is starting to pop up in the news a little bit more. I have to remind myself that not everybody's paying the same level of attention to it that I am, because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's everywhere. Everybody's talking. And I'm like, oh wait, just all the people I follow are talking about it.
Right.
Remind yourself. We've got 30 or 40 years of marketing around disposability and around convenience to kind of come back against. But I do think those conversations are starting to happen, of just people being like, wait a minute, when I throw that away, what is away? Like, where is away? There is no away.
Right.
It's here. Even if it disappears temporarily, it's still here.
I think across the country, here in Colorado, we've had places where we would stuff trash in the landfills that have been old, old mines or gravel pits or stuff like that. I mean, if you're familiar where the one is between Golden and Boulder there, just south of Rocky Flats, they filled a hole. But now when you go out and you see these in communities where they're mounds, and I look at those and I'm like, it's not a good thing. It's really not a good thing. And, the amount of gas that's emitting from those things. And, I can't help, every time I go out to the Denver airport, there's a huge mound out there by the Denver airport. And I
think
think of the eons of that.
The highest point of land in Florida is, in fact, their dumps.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's
so
Florida is the landfills.
Well, and I think a lot of it is if you help get the education out, then people will start making better decisions, because, like we say, we throw it in the recycle bin, it's gone. Who knows? We throw it in the trash bin. We never see it anymore. We don't start to think about it, because not everybody lives next door to one of those big mounds,
It's super true. And, life is busy.
Yeah.
We have a lot of things that we're worried about. And we really talk about progress, not perfection. I mean, it can feel overwhelming when you start to think about all of the things that it would be nice to change.
Right.
So we really try and encourage people to change one thing. Start carrying a reusable water bottle. Start carrying a reusable
Right.
shopping bag. Start thinking about, what is something that you could easily switch. And, if you looked at our social media stuff, you would probably take you a little bit to realize that we sell personal care products, because we do tend to talk a lot more about, kind of raising awareness and other changes that you can make, and
Mm-hmm.
promoting other brands and other companies and other solutions, because certainly, it's not going to be one thing that fixes any of this.
No,
It's going to
no.
be a lot of things, and kind of a change in lifestyle that helps us turn the ship around. And we encourage people to start where they are, and make the changes they can, and find what works for them, whatever that happens to be.
Now, are your products exclusively on your websites, or are you having any in retail locations, or where are all you available?
We just passed 100 retail locations.
Fantastic.
And yeah, they're listed right along on the tab on our website under shop. It says other retailers, so you can find that there. And a cool thing that is starting to happen, which I think started in Colorado, is refill shops are popping up all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
So for those incredibly organized people, I am not one of them, who are able to get the empty shampoo bottle out of their shower and to a shop that day and refilled and back into their shower. There are now places all over the country where you can, bring a bottle, fill up all your stuff, and you don't have to ship it anything anywhere. You can do it on your own. I designed, as I mentioned, this whole system to solve a need that I had. I also kept in mind my need for my own convenience, which is why we have a shipping model. I am the kind of person that I want to sign up for a subscription and never think about it again.
Right.
It just shows up. I use it. When I run out, I have another one under the counter. I switch it. I send it back. That's my need. But there are other people who, have a lot more energy or are a lot more organized. And these refill shops are a really cool option that we're seeing more and more.
I have heard of them. I don't know where one is, but I'm like you. I'm just not that organized. And while I just recently am just almost to the point of being an empty nester, I have a lot of time on my hands, but I don't have that much time on my hands yet to be able to think about, okay, today's the day I'm going to go refill these things. But, we, as living here in the United States and anywhere in Western culture, we have busy lives. We're doing a lot of things, and there's just so many things like this that are out of sight, out of mind, once we toss it into the bin. So now, are there organizations? I know there's like an American Plastics Association and stuff. Are there aluminum product container associations out there?
That's an interesting question. I don't think there are yet. I think it's too new. I think most of the aluminum people right now are still kind of more in the beverage industry.
Yep.
That are working together,
Mm-hmm.
but you are seeing more and more aluminum containers. So we kind of talk more as at a, personal care products, us in that industry talk to each other, and you are seeing more aluminum bottles. But no, we don't have the full weight of the aluminum lobby behind us yet. So
Okay.
that's something to work towards.
Well, I'm assuming you probably have your antenna up and seeing more and more of them as far as containers.
We are, which is great. I mean, I think, the more people are talking about it, the more awareness it brings in general, the more credibility it brings. It's fascinating as I talk to people, you sort of get the, what do you do? Talk about it. People are like, oh my God, that's so cool. Or you get the like, why would you want to do that? And so you decide how far you want to go down the road with that. But I think, more and more as you see more of it, I think that brings a credibility and okay, this is happening. Everybody's starting to do this. And some of the larger brands are trying it out. There's it's called Loop, which is Terracycle is a company that was started probably 10 years ago to recycle the hard to recycle things. Okay. And 2 years ago, they made a deal with Unilever, P&G, and a few other really large corp companies to get them to try out reusable containers. Okay. We're working with them now too, but you're seeing at least, trial balloons going up in different areas as well.
That's great. So how many products do you guys have currently today?
We have 16 products today.
16. Wow, fantastic. So
Yeah, so
quite
it's
an
fun.
array.
You know, it is, and it's a good problem to have that people are asking you for more things.
Well, that's good.
So yeah, it's great. Our customers, I feel so lucky. Our customers are great people.
Mm-hmm.
They're very supportive. They help us spread the word. They give us feedback. They are patient with us when we do something dumb or when our website breaks or whatever happens. So I feel very lucky for that. I was doing all the customer service when we started. I still do some of it just to
Mm-hmm.
make sure I know what's going on. And, I've heard horror stories from other businesses about dealing with people. And so I feel very lucky that, we have very bought in, motivated customers who are helpful.
Wow, what a fascinating story. So from, Pirate of the Caribbean beach bum to the reusable container queen. That's quite a step.
I'm gonna have to borrow that. That's gonna be my new Instagram bio.
That's right.
That's great.
So, well, see, that's the crazy thing in life. I mean, there's so many things. People don't understand the stories. It's people just think there's these overnight successes or that people just popped into something. Most people don't realize. I'll just share a quick snippet. The founder of Hershey's Chocolate, the world's largest chocolate company, one of the largest candy companies in the world, Milton Hershey. He filed bankruptcy 7 times in the candy business before he got it right the 8th time. And so no one would consider Hershey's Chocolate a failure, right? Heck, he even has a town named after him and stuff. Interesting gentleman and stuff.
But yeah, I love the sports metaphors of, like in baseball, hitting 400 is amazing, but that means you're missing, 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. Yeah.
So,
it doesn't. It doesn't take much to make a success. All it takes, I think, is resilience. It takes a lot of resilience.
Perseverance. Definitely. There's a great. I never thought I'd be quoting Henry Winkler like the fonts, but I heard on NPR he said, his most important things are perseverance and gratitude.
Yep.
Like perseverance to get him there, and then gratitude so that he's not like a bitter, angry old man once he gets there. That he realizes how lucky he is to be there. And I think that's, certainly we have hit a lot of bumps, a lot of mistakes, a lot of dark days, but you just, if you believe in it, you keep going.
You keep going.
And that matters.
Well, it sounds like this is a lot like your adventures around the Caribbean, that you would do it all again, right? So if you're looking back now where you are.
Yeah, and probably had I not done that, I wouldn't have been so struck by, I think there's a new thing that said there might be more plastic than fish in the ocean by 2050.
Oh my
and
goodness.
I heard that right around the time I was starting this. And,
wow.
Having spent that much time on the water, I was like, no.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And,
crazy.
Plastic, unlike so many other problems we face, we can just stop buying it.
Yeah.
It's not a huge, what's causing this and what can we do?
Right.
We know what's causing it. We know there's too much single-use plastic out there. There's not enough market for it. We can stop buying it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's great. I think it's really interesting. And it looks like you have a really common sense approach, because a lot of people, you look at any of this, and I don't get into the politics of all the climate change and environmentals and stuff. Some people just think it's just like these radical steps in one direction or the other. And it's like, you know what? That never really works. Change doesn't usually happen like that. It's gradual, and then you get momentum and those types of things. And so I just sort of grin. I'm getting older. The older I get, the more I grin, because it's like, well, those are all really good ideas, but maybe we need to step into some of those. It takes a while.
Yeah, and I consider this a very low-tech solution.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as you said, it is common sense. It's like back to the milkman delivering the milk on the back door, and then you set the empty bottles out and he picks them up and he drops off the fresh ones. Or, again, dating myself, even when Netflix got started, they sent you the DVDs, you used them. When you're done, you sent them back. That's, those were the things that inspired this. It's not a fancy high-tech solution, even if you buy it on the internet. It's plain, I mentioned it was our maiden name, but it's also plain and simple.
Yeah, it is plain and simple. Okay. Well, give your website one more time.
Yeah, thank you. Plain with an E, Plain Products, PLAINE.com. And you can find us on all the social places at Plain Products.
At Plain Products. Okay, so I think what you're doing is amazing. I am going to have you back because I'm going to find out if you did take my idea and tattoo all of the containers. So,
I always appreciate a deadline or, a reason to remember to do things. So thank you for that. Now I'm going to be held to it.
well, and then I always have the $64 million question. If you've listened to any of my podcasts, you might be prepared. But if you haven't, this is the one I always ask. In this modern day and world, we kind of have these personal bucket lists, the things we want to go do. And you've already done some of that by, being a pirate for a few years. But there's an opposite of a bucket list, okay? And it rhymes with bucket and it starts with an F. So I'm not going to use that word, but it's the things you don't want to do, something you are never going to do. Now, we've learned a lot about you because you were a little bit of a vagabond and adventure and those types of stuff. So we know you have that side, that things that might be forecasted on your bucket list, but what's something that's on that other list?
And people constantly want us to go on Shark Tank, and I refuse. I have zero interest in doing something like that.
Congratulations. I'll tell you some offline stories about that too. No, stay your course. Stay your course on that one. Yeah, it'd be much better to sail than it ever would to put that engine in your boat. That's for sure. So. Well, fantastic. It's been great, Lindsey. I am excited that we had the opportunity to connect, to share your story. I think you're onto something really good here. Common sense is in such short supply.
Unfortunately, that does seem to be the case these days.
It's crazy. I look around our world today and the things that are happening, and it's almost surreal. It's like, are we really having these types of conversations? And
it is. Sometimes you do listen to the news and I was like, you can't make this stuff up. And if you did, nobody would believe you.
No, nobody would believe you. Nobody would believe you.
Truth is stranger than fiction these days.
Yeah, and it's so divisive what's happening here in our country, some of these subjects, and you're just like, are you kidding? We have nothing better to focus on than these things? Yeah.
Well, and certainly I think it is a shame that the environment and climate change became politicized.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's nothing less political than being worried about our kids and our grandkids and the world that we're leaving them. And we're all stuck on this planet together, whether we like it or not. So until Musk figures out a way to go to Mars, we're here. So.
I've always said this about climate change, and I believe this to be true. And maybe it's just the common sense farmer type kid in me is, I don't believe that there's a person walking the earth that wouldn't choose between a cleaner world or a dirty world. If you're going to say, okay, I'm going to go over here to these two lakes and one's dirty and one's clean, you're going to want the cleaner one. You're always going to want the cleaner stuff. That's just human nature. Okay. So it's not that we are in disagreement of what the end result is. It's just that people are on these varying paths on how they think we should get there. And that's where the issue is, because at the end of the day, I really don't think that anybody's that flippant. I mean, I don't see guys that are hanging out in the boonies with drinking their beer out of the back of their pickup in a typical stereotypical situation that they're throwing their cans out in the lake. I don't see that. So I think everybody wants the same outcome. I just think they're different paths.
Totally agree, and I hope it's a place that we can find some common ground. I mean, I think that's what we're missing right now. And certainly if we can all just agree that we do want a cleaner earth, maybe that's a step in the right direction.
All right. Well, listen, it's been great today, Lindsey, and I absolutely will have you back on. We want to keep track of what's going on with your progress. I'm going to be looking to see what happens. It's fun to catch up with somebody who, what's that old phrase? Not all who wander are lost. So we basically have we have somebody that was going into public policy and nonprofits, became a pirate, was a retired pirate, environmentalist, you're all over the place. So it is an interesting story.
Well, I think when you said at the beginning, there's not enough of lifetimes for all the interests.
Yep.
That would certainly, I would, agree with you on that. And it has been a ton of fun for me learning about all of this stuff. And we'll see how long I hang in before I start the next one. But it has been a really fun journey, and I've enjoyed it.
Well, stay with it, because I really do believe in that, and that's the reason I'm doing this show. There's too many interests for just one lifetime, and I don't have time to go hunt them all down. But now I do, and I help share those. So anyway, it's been great.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay, great. And I'm excited because people around the world are going to be hitting your website. I know that for sure. All right, folks, that's it for today's episode. We thank very much for Lindsey and her being so gracious with her time, her story, and the effort she's taking. So until next time, don't forget to follow us on any of the platforms that you're listening to the podcast. Check out the website at rexandrewshow.com. And I always have this to say at the end of every episode: be safe, be bold, and make it a great day.